Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary as FECK with myself, Nick, and your usual regular other co-host, Clive, and a special guest who has brought us this this novel we're going to be talking about tonight. That is, introduce yourself, special guest.
Shaun, which yeah, put it on the internet. I'm responsible for bringing this into your lives.
hmm so yes, we are talking Chainsaw Terror, also known as Come the Night, by Nick Blake, also known as Shaun Hutson. And doesn't he have like another dozen pseudonyms as well beyond?
Probably.
I
Yeah, I think
believe
there's a
so.
couple of three war novels or something, Ben, or some sort of
Yes.
Shermanic game.
Yes, I believe he did write a few books under the name Robert Yip. Um, but anyway, yeah, so Gav, why don't you why don't you tell us what this is all about and how did you come across? I my exposure to Sean Hudson is entirely due to the other reprobate here who lent me a copy of Slugs 2 Breeding Ground when I lived in Japan, and it's a fucking great book.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, Slugs is good as well, but Breeding Ground is, yeah.
Yes.
Really a shame they didn't make the sequel to Juan Piquer Simon's classic film
hmm
as well. Uh,
Yes.
that's a that's actually a really Slugs is one of those films that I find myself wanting to watch more than you could possibly imagine. Like I quite
hmm
often am like, oh, I'm really in the mood for slugs today. Like it comes up a lot. I don't know why exactly, but I do love, even though Pieces, for example, is a much more berserk, proper psychotronic classic.
hmm
There's
Which that's
something
a nice
about
connective
like
tissue here, actually, with pieces being, you don't have to go to Texas for a chainsaw massacre. Because as it turns out, there's lots of places you can go for a chainsaw massacre
yes,
that aren't just Texas.
Kilburn is this one setting.
So yeah, so for some reason this wasn't really on my radar. I don't think I was aware of Chainsaw Terror, aka Come the Night. So Gav, how
Well,
did
I'd recently read the Skull. I found like a really cheap copy of that, 2010. So and then I was like looking at what people were saying about that online, and then I saw like references to this chainsaw terror, and he'd written a book about a chainsaw maniac. It was set in 1980, so that was music to my ears. So, but very hard to find a physical copy at a reasonable price. I think probably the only one of his books that seems to be really, really rare, and expensive. Get
well, it's
hold
interesting
of.
because obviously we'll stick the link. Gav's written about this on his blog as well. It's a fun write-up. But what was interesting about that for me, and you've mentioned it before, you're kind of relatively new to reading horror fiction, right? Like you
Need
weren't
to
into
read.
it when you were younger, were you? Somehow. You
No, I think I
avoid
only
that.
sort of got into it during like the lockdown period. But I remember a lot of these books from my childhood, but I never like really experienced them until sort of recently
What
got
do you
into them.
think? Because yeah, knowing you as I can't imagine a young Gav not picking up something called Chainsaw Terror off the shelf. Or what do you think? Why do you think you weren't into horror books when you were
I don't
young?
know. I just thought they were sort of maybe a bit more respectable and sort of obviously clearly not the case when you read things like this. But if
No.
anything, these seem to be like more extreme than any of the video nasties that were around.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's the bit surprised me when you said that because yeah, I had the opposite. Like as a kid picking up and discover, oh, hang on, they can get away with things in books that they can't get away with in films and stuff. So, but I hadn't read this. I'd heard about it, and like you debunk in your article, and we're going to mention now as well. I'd heard the whole thing about how it had apparently been banned, and then the public the publishers had republished it with a different title and totally different context, and everything was cut out and stuff. But no, lo and behold, and that's why I didn't read it for a long time as well, because I thought, oh, I must read the Chainsaw Terror version, right?
Yeah.
Which I do kind of remember being reissued, I think, at some point. I think some small press did put it out again, but quickly sold out. But that was the reason why, because I thought, oh, I want the full. But it turns out every published version of this book is exactly the same, right? There's no uncut version or.
Which doesn't seem to like devalue the copy of the original Chainsaw Terror. It seems to have like jumped the price up of the other editions. A
Right.
few years ago, when people didn't realise it was the same edition, they were like going like dirt cheap because it was starting to be like a heavily censored version. And now people realise it's the same book, but that's sort of gone up to about £30 now anyway. Yeah.
But luckily, some kind soul has fished a copy out from the bottom of a septic tank and scanned it up on archive.org complete with I don't even want to know what some of the follicles on screen might be. It's a very
I particularly like this page. I don't
hairy
know
book.
how well you can see that beautiful yellow smear all over. Like you could almost smell this
Well,
ex-library copy.
It's the equivalent as of, when hair gets trapped in the gate when you're watching it.
Yes.
There's a lot of, oh, what's that? Like just squirrely bits. Like I don't know what they are, and I don't want to know.
It's the abject, Clive. That's what that's called. The abject.
Okay.
I'm sort of reading this from a library copy as well. It seems to like rented out continuously, like on a weekly basis from about 1985 to 1986 or something.
Probably by one guy who also who had a large McCullough chainsaw in his
And then who
garage.
finally decided after much deliberation, trash. Like he wasn't sure the first time he read it, right? He had to, I don't know. Yeah. So this is from. I was surprised how early it was. It's from 1984, isn't it? I thought it was from a few years later, but it's pretty early.
And so the story that
Shaun
Shaun,
had an idea to do like a novelization of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
yes, yeah, that's what I had read too. So the publishers went, supposedly the story is they went to Shaun and said, could you write us? And then came back and said, actually don't. We can't get the rights. And so why don't you just write a book about
Dennis Nielsen.
Yeah, a chainsaw murderer. And yes, history was made, I guess. I mean, the really obvious Ed Gein is pretty clearly in the DNA of this, right? And Psycho and Texas
So,
Chainsaw
and
Massacre.
I think definitely Dennis Nielsen as well, right? The timing lines.
That was all over the newspapers.
Yeah.
Right.
Bit of Maniac in there, maybe.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, it's quite impressively. I mean, because it's not like a great book by any means, but it is quite impressively just grisly and miserable, isn't it? Like,
oh yes. It's well, it's funny. The thing is, in some ways, it's kind of timely now because it really feels like something that an incel would write or buy or you know what I mean? Like it really has all of that, like, wow, all women are whores. Like there's just this like rage simmering on every page of this thing. And although there's a nod obviously towards like we're not supposed to sympathize with what the hell's his name? Edward. You can imagine the wrong reader taking away the wrong message entirely.
I could edit this very badly for you, Nick. I'm just going to edit that bit out of you saying that, and then
yes, thank you.
Message for Christmas.
Yeah.
Yes, it's about a bloke who's.
I mean, the opening is quite
nasty,
disturbing, right? Because it begins with his dad. It begins with our lead. I mean, it's even the protagonist. He's kind of the protagonist, right? Which is also a disturbing feature of the book. But yeah, it begins with his dad murdering his mum, because all women are whores, as we've discovered. So yeah, his mum was going to walk out on the dad, and she has a lover. So dad kills her with a mirror, and it's right from like page 5 or whatever, we're straight into some of the most unpleasantly gory stuff I've
For those who are
ever.
just joining us now, we are talking, of course, about the new Wallace and Gromit film that came out
Yep.
on Wallace and Gromit, All Women Are Whores. A bit of a departure for Aardman.
Nick.
No one saw this one coming.
um, but yeah, so and then yeah, kind of take it from there. So the son witnesses this grisly crime, and then but he seems to have been already kind of unhinged anyway. It's not like this is they're giving this the excuse that oh it was seeing his mom murdered. He seems to have already been.
It does seem to mention that he made that people, like he observes his sister feel like prior to even, one parent killing the other. So
Yeah,
he's
yeah. There's a bit of Anthony Perkins in there for sure. And yeah, and then the rest of the book is him just escalating, escalating.
And
So
not
I
leaving
like
his
that
house.
every third chapter.
The house gets progressively stinkier and stinchier, right? And
Oh yes,
very Dennis
yeah.
Nielsen kind of
They
side of things.
keep coming back to the decapitated head of his sister that's sitting on this bed, and every time the description is even more
Mm.
stomach-churningly gross.
Yeah, he brings sex workers home, shows them the head, and then murders them. And meanwhile, there's a reporter, right? Our kind of hero who's on the scene, and
It doesn't show up until like the last third of the book, really. When I was going through it, I kind of just skimmed through it again today to remind myself of what goes on. And I was surprised at how late, relatively late in the story, that
well,
reporter guy
he's
kind of
about, but he
shows up.
doesn't have much agency, right? Until
Right.
towards the end when he decides to do the classic stupid thing that all the people in these films and books do. Yes, I'm going to
Hmm.
put you out on the street
Hmm.
with a tracker that I've never used before. It'll be
Hmm.
very,
fine. I'm
very
sure
sort of
you won't.
blowout that part, anyway, with the
Yeah, yeah,
prostitute. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, she's kind of like the Nancy Allen of this book, isn't she? But yes, I mean, yeah, it delivers, I suppose. There's a certain amount of chainsaws
Oh
and
yeah.
terror.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell where the cuts were made, and so in that way, I can see why readers would have we could fall into this idea of if you hadn't read the original edition and you had only read the Come the Night reprint, you can see where the pieces have been excised. It's really clear in a few parts. There's a part where the drill appears, right? And then we're going to get into some Lucio Fulci kind of Black and Decker in the eyeball stuff. And then suddenly, yeah. So as I was saying, I do think it's a very obvious cut there. And then there's also apparently, again, I don't know if it's true or not, but there's supposedly a scene that involves the kids, right? There's a scene where he's because he's a handyman, like our lead, incel psycho, and is a part where he's at a woman's house and she's got these two kids, and it does seem as though something might happen there, and it doesn't. And but yeah, there may apparently supposedly because there's all these stories about some sort of like mimeographed, facsimile version of the original book that's made the underground, but then no one's ever seen it. Like no one has come forward and
No,
said,
only the legendary Arab Abdul Azar, I believe, put a copy bound from human skin in 1983.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know that I would want to read a much more unpleasant version of this. It's funny in some ways. It does kind of predict what's his face, Bret Easton Ellis. Um, there's just no part in which anybody talks
Your
glowingly
well,
about Phil Collins.
it doesn't often happen. Your accent threw me there,
Oh,
and I was before I figured out. I was like, who the fuck's Gretny Ellis? But it was Bret Easton.
Bret
Yeah,
Easton
there we
Ellis.
go.
Yes, that's the one. Yes, American Psycho.
Right.
Because there's lots of people getting cut open and then their bowels kind of like stinking out the place. There's lots of kind of focus on real uh just a stinky viscera.
Stinky Viscera. Yeah, it'll be another good subtitle. You don't need to go to Texas for Stinky Viscera.
Stinky viscera.
It's the thing with Sean Hudson. I mean, Sean Hudson's one of those interesting like obviously there's slugs in this breeding ground, and I've read some other things which didn't stick, and then but I feel as if he's almost there's got to be some other jet because he's not a consistently great writer by any means, right? And he's very kind of meat and potatoes, and he's he's too kind of self-aware, I think. I've never read a book of his that totally goes off the rails in a way like Guy N. Smith at his best does. Like, because some Guy N. Smith books are fine and they're enjoyable, but every now and again, it just when they get really delirious and he's inspired or whatever. Those are the ones, right? Those are the ones you really enjoy. And I don't know if Sean Hudson has any books like because I think he's a bit too, in a way, he's a bit too good of a writer, but he's not a massively inspired writer. Do you know what I mean? So I wonder if there's if anyone knows, if anyone's well versed there, Sean Hudson, maybe give us a primer. What are some other? Because I would quite like to read if he's got anything else like this, like which isn't brilliant or anything, but is just pleasingly disgusting. I think I'd quite like to read it because there's something wrong with me. But do you know what I mean? Clearly not.
I think he's sort of a short sort of story sort of, not a short story, but a short, relatively short book format sort of suits him better than maybe some of those longer
Oh
ones.
yeah, no, I don't think I'd like to read his Civil War book or something like that.
But you're right. I think he's you don't want a doorstopper Stephen King length thing from
No.
Shaun. You want something that clocks in at 180 pages.
I wonder how well travelled these books were. Did they ever get published in, say, Japan? Or...
I don't know, actually. That's a good question. If they've been translated at all.
I think there's a French edition of this.
Yes, there is, because you put a scan up with a cover.
Yeah.
Nice cover. I like the French one.
It
looks like a minted
some of the Guy and Smith one sort of made it to Poland. I think they're very big in Poland and possibly been bootlegged in Russia.
It also, I got the slight vibe from it as well of those short stories when the Pan book of short horror stories, when they stopped just republishing old weird tale stories and they started having original content, that very British kind of sort of don't open till Christmas kind of vibe. You know what I mean? Like something very just kind of depressing, or like the vision of Manchester and Living Dead, the Manchester Morgue as well, right? Or that kind of, it's got that kind of, I don't know, very non-glamorous serial killer kind of vibes.
Yeah,
it's fun to be in the company of this maniac for. Yeah.
No, I mean,
would it have been about? Would it have been the same character who returned, or would they have just been linked by the chainsaw?
I wonder that too. Yeah. And then McCullough is a real brand of chainsaws, I think, because you wouldn't think they would have wanted their name attached, or to be named as the brand of murder weapon used by the woman-hating psycho.
I don't own a chainsaw, so I don't really. Do you have a chainsaw, Gav?
No.
Honestly,
no. Wasn't me that carved up that guy recently.
Nick, I'm not going to even say Nick. There's no way Nick has a chainsaw, and if you do, your dad has to come round and turn it on for you, right?
Yeah, no, I don't have a chainsaw, but there is. You can take courses here at the MacPhail homestead in chainsaw safety and all that stuff. They do special courses specifically for women, actually, as well.
What? How to kill women with chainsaws?
That's exactly what they do, Clive. Yes.
run by J. Spinell.
Yes. Um, yeah, no, you know what? This is, I don't know if you can in good conscience recommend this. Um, but it's in the right mindset, in the, if you're
If
somebody who enjoys your horror,
if
on
you
the
see
gory
it for
side.
24p at your local charity shop of choice,
Hmm.
you should
Hmm.
probably pick it up. I mean, you'd make a killing.
I was gonna say, yeah, because they could just resell that thing on eBay for 300, and you'd be laughing.
Yeah, I don't think you see signals in the wilderness anymore though these days. So.
You never know though. That's the thing with the charity shop is you'll go in there 99 times and find nothing, and then all of a sudden
Hmm.
I
something
suppose that's,
appear.
you have that library thing at the beginning of it. You have that sort of mainstream these sort of book once was, and today it'd probably be, just self-publish it. You'd probably have trouble getting it into the shops.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't, for instance, does the W.H. Smith of my childhood, is that a thing that still exists on a British high street? Like,
Yeah, I think W.H. Smith, but I don't.
so would it still be like, because my memory of W. Smith would you'd have the whole wall full of the latest magazines, and then you'd have just lots of books. And
Very little books. I don't think they have many books these days. They all
do
seem
they
to
sell in a W. Smith now then?
like magazines and not that many books.
Hmm.
Not really. Like HMV, that rarely sells physical media these days. All just like bobbing head things and merch and that sort of thing.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Hmm. That browsing culture, I suppose, is past.
yeah. I remember when HMV was just all wall to wall VHS and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
yeah.
These days, it's like tiny corner in there. It's become more and more sort of second to you know pop star merch and stuff like that.
I'm not going to ask you, Nick, just because I'm guessing
Hmm.
you live in a part of the world that hasn't had anything like that for a couple of centuries. Right? Uh,
Well, we have bookshops. We do have
you do you?
bookshops. Oh yeah, yeah.
But
Indigo.
like first run books or second hand?
Yeah, no. First run, like so, Indigo or slash chapters is still very much a going concern, and most cities have a couple of big ones. But the funny thing is now I would say about 30% of what they carry is manga.
Okay.
I I would say that Japanese comics make up a large amount of the money made by first run bookshops in North America. Um, for whatever reason. But but you're right though. Finding a place that sells specifically like DVDs at this point is very challenging. I can't remember the last time I even saw outside of maybe like at the bargain bin in like a Walmart, where they have all of those kind of like dollar DVDs. You know, that's the only time I ever really see physical media for films these days.
I don't think charity shops even accept VHS these days. I don't think they were
Oh, really?
too no
Right.
too bulky and not many people have the machine. I think they're even a bit sniffy about donating DVDs as well. I don't think so. Take up too much space and not many people want them. So, gone are the days when people paid out 14 quid for a DVD. So.
Yeah, I remember going. I mean, even fucking London. I remember going back to London as early as like 2003 or something, and yeah, it just wasn't. I mean, there were shops selling DVDs, but yeah, but it was very much that sort of. I don't know. They didn't feel like people frequented them, like they were already being phased out, and
Mhm.
like it wasn't. And I no rent. I didn't see any rental shops. I was amazed how long the rental shop clung on here in Japan.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, it's only maybe a few years ago that they more or less totally disappeared, and they still have them, but it's again, it's renting like video games or something like that as opposed to film.
And the Tower Records is gone, right?
I think so.
It-
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean that for me was a touchstone. I would regularly go there because they had that one floor of English language books and magazines.
Yes, it's where I used to buy
Yeah,
my
these,
sixth
these
copy.
two are in a Piccadilly Circus, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I remember
Anyway, we seem to.
that.
There's no chainsaw terror in this talk. We've strayed. Do we have any final thoughts about Come the Night?
It's exactly what you think it is.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes. It's truth in advertising. This is
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
It is-
Chainsaw Terror is at least. Come the
yes.
Night could potentially be like a lost F. Scott Fitzgerald novel, which it's not.
Um, yeah. It's no, I think it delivers what somebody who wants to buy a book called Chainsaw Terror would hope for sure. No question.
And you can head on over to archive.org and you can read it.
Smell it.
Yes. I don't quite understand. Does anyone understand why you have to rent it every hour renewal thing? That's bizarre to me.
I wonder if
Especially
it's a legal thing somehow.
but
Yeah.
if you keep it open, I've noticed, beyond the hour, you
Yeah,
can
oh yeah.
read
It just re-ups itself. Yeah, but if you leave it
I think they've
alone,
done away with the hour thing now. If you just continually read it, it'll
yeah.
just start automatically reading
Oh,
it.
really? You don't have to rent it again or
I
whatever.
think they've got rid of that now since it came back. Yeah.
Oh, because one time I remember I was quite surprised. I didn't. I just some legal thing. But I remember one time, maybe when I was reading Chainsaw Terror, coming back to it, and I wasn't allowed to read it because
Me
someone
too.
else was reading it.
And I
I thought
suspect
it
it was
must be one of
I.
you.
It was you. It was you and me, and we were fighting over the same copy. I
So
think.
do they really only let the link out one person at a time? That can't be right.
I mean, I had exactly the same experience at, I suspect, the same time as you,
It was
Colin.
either
Like,
that or the Dick Tracy thing we read.
yeah, either way, it was still you
Yeah.
who was cock blocking me from being able to read what I needed to read.
Right. But I mean, yeah, it just strikes me as strange because obviously no one wants to read these books. But if there's something, vaguely popular up there,
I wonder if it could be a thing where, for some reason, they can't be sued or they can't, you know what I mean, by whoever owns the copyright because they say, well, we're not actually giving it out, and people only have access to in this.
yes, you
in
get
this
a
way.
license, like a limited license.
Yeah. I wonder if that's what it is. But
So anyway, yeah, you may have to battle someone else, but
yes.
but worth your time if you're not finding it for 24p.
Mm.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
If you don't want to spend, hundreds and hundreds of
We better go
pounds.
because we are definitely just wobbling on now. Right. Then.
You should read Slugs too, Burial Ground, that's for sure. Or Breeding Ground, not Burial Ground, that's the entire thing.
Is there a novelization of Burial Ground? I'd like to read that if there is.
I would indeed too.
Although I don't know how they would transfer the white hot thrill of that weird little dude to the book.
Yes.
He
Yes,
has
indeed.
to be seen to be believed.
Believed. Mm-hmm.
Maybe Shaun Hutson could do it.
There we go. He has done a couple of Hammer films, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Terminator, famously, right? Wasn't that one of his first things? Was an adaptation or
really?
the novelization of Terminator? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure. I was meant to read it actually, just out of interest to see what Shaun Hutson did with Terminator.
Not because someone definitely novelized The Exterminator, right? Is that what you're thinking of? The Robert King
No, I don't think
Terminator?
so.
Oh, okay.
But you know what? Maybe I'll Google it here, and I'll because I made an outrageous claim somewhere recently that Floella Benjamin appeared naked in something, and that was entirely untrue. So, Floella, I'm
Okay.
terribly sorry for having made that aspersion. Yeah, clearly I was thinking of some other beloved, Duchess from Trinidad, who, yeah, anyway. So
Who was
Was
sorry.
she I Don't Want to Be Born? That's pretty hard, isn't it?
She was in that, yes, but she
Yeah,
does not take her top off, which is what I was
no.
laboring under the impression
right?
that
Well,
she.
I could make shit up as well. New Wave Hookers 3 has an appearance from Rusty Lee. Her only known hardcore appearance.
Yep, the Terminator novel by Shaun Hutson, um, released 1985, February 21st.
A proper licensed novelization of the Terminator.
Yes. Yes.
Huh. I wonder. I would be curious to read that as well. I wonder if that's a collectible or if it's out and about.
Yeah, not. But anyway, yeah, I'd be interested to know if he had access to like the shooting script or anything, and if there's stuff in there that maybe, sometimes things show up in novelizations that were in earlier versions of the script, but then didn't end up in the movie and stuff. So, or if he was given license to just make up his own bollocks. But either way,
Stop talking!